My name is Aurelie Cormier, and welcome to the Intentional Wellness Parenting Show, where we set an intention to create healing and wellness every living day. Let me ask you, have you felt sometimes that life is just hard? Wonder if I told you that our life is actually meant for joy, fun, and good health. Of course, it doesn't just happen, but the first step to getting there is to believe that good health is possible and to envision what you would love. From there, we can choose the simple health habits that give our minds, bodies, and spirits the nourishment it needs to work well. Over 2 million people in the U.S. will be diagnosed with cancer this year. Between 600,000 and 1 million are preventable. Our genes are not our destiny, yet our epigenetics can be affected by environmental factors. Therefore, the best time to make a difference is now. So let's dive right in. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I am so excited about the show that we're going to present for you on intentional wellness parenting on Transformation Talk Radio, because I have a very special guest for you to meet. I know last month we did, celebrated mothers and women for Mother's Day. And June, we have Father's Day. So I thought it would be the perfect time to really celebrate fathers in our world as well. And so I asked Bob Brady here if he would be the person to speak for dads. And I think you're going to really love what he has to say. He actually grew up in Massachusetts and graduated from UMass Amherst, and from there enrolled in the Marine Corps, and he is now a retired Marine colonel after 30 years of service, where he was a Marine aviator. And during his career, he and so many of his peers were often deployed overseas for extended periods of time when their children were young. And like so many military families, extended deployments away from home can present significant challenges, as I think many of you are aware, but I think Bob will share some of those challenges with you. And for not only the ones deployed, but for the whole family, the parents as well as the children. And it really requires, I think, I think many military families would agree that it requires exceptional parenting from both the mother and the father. And last month, because we did celebrate Mother's Day, being a father in today's world is very challenging. And I think, dads have a really important role. And oftentimes the world that we're living in today is so different than the one that we grew up in. And so, for military families, it can be hard to figure out what is it that you can do to be a good role model to your children when you're away for extended periods of time. And I think this is an issue that Bob, I think, has a strength in and can share some really great ideas, not only for dads that are deployed as a military person, but for many dads today who are so involved in their work, they're away from home for extended periods of time. And so I think you're really going to appreciate the wisdom and that he has to share and some of his thoughts on these ideas. That not only he was able to learn over the time that he was in the military, but also from his peers who shared many of their thoughts of how to cope to be a dad to help with their children's wellness, even during very challenging times. So welcome, Bob. I'm so glad you're here today.
Well, thank you. I want to emphasize what Aurelie said about happy belated Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. I mean, what a special day that is to all the mothers out there. And I'd just like to caveat something that Aurelie talked about, a lot of the military uh, uh, issues where fathers and mothers have to make sacrifices. You know, that saying when people in the military thank you for your service. Well, the military has no monopoly on that. look at during COVID, all the frontline healthcare providers that were out there putting their lives on the line every day when there was no vaccine yet, and the pandemic was raging, and the parents, mothers, and fathers had to worry about not only themselves getting sick, but bringing the sickness home to their children. So I
Mm.
just like to caveat that and I'd like to thank all the healthcare providers that are out there today. I have not forgotten it, nor have many other people forgotten the sacrifices you did during the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you,
Um,
Bob. And, I think because this is the month of Father's Day and, you know, to figure out what is it that helps dads to be the best role model for their children. Um, when dads have all these multiple responsibilities with their career as well as fatherhood. And I think for many of us, we recognize that this is a sacred responsibility that dads have. And it's so, the way that I like to look at it is like filling up your spiritual parenting bank. How do you ensure that you are honored, respected, supported, feeling energized when you're being pulled in so many directions all the time between your work and your family that can leave you feeling depleted. And so being able to offer that love and encouragement and support to your kids coming from a full spiritual parenting bank is rather than one that feels empty and you feel burned out. So I've actually known you for a couple of years, Bob, and it struck me that you seem to have a lot of words of wisdom on being a really good dad. um, I think because, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it was a very different world than I think since 9/11. And so a lot of parents are trying to navigate this new time. Their kids are trying to navigate this new time, growing up with a very different world than we grew up with. So I'm hoping that you might be able to share with our audience today what led you to seek out how to be the best dad that you could be for your baby when she was born and the benefits that you found from that.
it was quite easy for me initially when you have mentors or people that you know are truly role models and you've seen them. Again, I didn't become a parent until I was 39 years old. And I only have one and only daughter, and she's 30 years old. But when I was younger and I did not have a child, I wasn't even married, I had some of my peers that were, two of them distinctively, were just incredible role models about how to be a parent.
Mm.
Two totally dedicated fathers. We deployed together many, many times over and over again. And just their dedication, how they led by example with their children, how they totally dedicated themselves to their children. And it goes back to what I said earlier about, spending time, when they're back from deployment, spending time, uh, considering it sacred to spend time with your children, but more importantly, to lead by example.
Hmm.
And they set the finest example for their children. And like I said, one of them today is a retired lieutenant general who's got 4 children and 11 grandchildren. The other one's a retired lieutenant colonel who's got 3 children and 5 grandchildren. And to this day, they spend almost all their time with their children and their grandchildren as they are retired.
Mm.
Having a role
Mm.
model is that's someone you can go to for advice and say,
Right.
because if an issue comes up, they've already worked it before. It's not the first time they've seen it.
Mm. Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing that. And what I heard over and over again is that you consciously made the decision to look for role models. Um, and because again, you were in a different situation than when you were growing up. And so rather than just go along with what you were familiar with, you decided to seek out those role models and really, and also observe how they were being good dads for their kids. Um, and what's really admirable about that is you could have just gone along, you go for your deployment, you come back, you go for your deployment, you come back, and the experience of your daughter uh, with her dad might have been very different than the experience that you created by seeking out these role models. And so good for you that, when life is so different than the one we grew up with, you were able to, instead of just accepting the way things were and just going along, you sought out to try to be the best dad that you could be. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. And so, and what things would you say when your daughter was young, which often are some of the sweetest, most, there can be the most challenging times of our lives, but they're also a time when our kids are changing rapidly. I mean, the first tooth comes in, the first steps, the first time they speak, the first time they know a letter or a number. I'm guessing that you missed some of those opportunities. And so how were you able to gather, to meet those challenges? And were there any resources that you found helpful for that?
Like I said early, and again, whether no matter what profession moms or dads are in, and what external factors keep them away from home for extended periods of time, um, to try and always remember to keep in mind that your time at home is sacred, especially when children are young and they're so
Mm,
impressionable, and not to
mm,
waste any of it there. That everything is that time is sacred, knowing that you are going to have to be away from home for whatever your job requires you to do, um, and um, and then also uh, for those of us who are fortunate to have healthy children without major impairments, never take that for granted either. I mean, I think all of us have seen the challenges parents have with special needs children and how time consuming that can be and how challenging that can be. So I would say never take for granted when if you have a healthy child. Uh,
mm,
um,
yes.
of course, being a team member, if you are not a single parent, if you are fortunate enough to be happily married, then make sure you don't take your spouse her, him or hers uh, contributions very seriously when they are really doing their best to be a team member. And then, of course, the last thing I'd say
Mhm.
is read to your child or your children. Read and read and read when they're young. It's a great time for bonding. It helps educate them better. It helps them set up success. I mean, almost anyone will tell you that a children that has been read to repeatedly by their parents is often much more successful as they go on in their work up through the educational level. That's so and plus it's
Mm.
such a special bonding time. You can never read to your child too much.
Right. And, I would probably, in addition to reading to them after they're born, reading to them before they're born, because oftentimes, when we read to them before they're born, they hear our voice and they recognize our voice after they're born and they come out. They recognize the mom's voice. They recognize if the dad has talked to them quite a bit in the womb, they recognize the dad's voice too. So I love that thought to read to your children, because yes, what a wonderful experience together, and you're role modeling for your kids something that they can do that's going to help them to be more successful in life too. And some of those stories when they're little, they're just the sweetest. I can remember them being some of the sweetest stories to share with them. And, you know, this brings to mind too that, not only are moms so helpful to the growth and development of children, but dads are really important to the growth and development of children too. And I do see in today's world so many dads much more involved between uh helping get groceries, and I see a lot of dads taking kids to the grocery store today to get the groceries, as well as they're involved in doing the laundry, or things around the house. So that is something different than many men who grew up during the 50s, 60s, and were what example they had of what a dad really does. But in terms, maybe you could share some things that you did with your daughter to help to keep that connection, maybe when were deployed for 6 months at a time, or when you came home, special things that you did with your daughter besides reading to help build that connection, that encouragement, that support, so that gave her greater confidence in herself, um, and created special memories for the two of you.
It goes back to what I was alluding to earlier about treating your time with your child or children as when you're not working as sacred, especially when they're young. And I think it's spending time with them on their extracurricular activities, whether it's children's soccer, whether it's little league, whether it's high school or middle school track, whether it's high school football practices, and just taking the time to be there, and they know that you're there, and they know that you care enough,
Mm,
and to try and make it a point that if you can be there, like taking off an afternoon from work, if you're physically available to do that, and you show up, and they know that, I go, wow, there's my dad, or there's my mom. And it's like, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Wow, there's not a lot of other parents here. I believe that means a lot to them, and especially knowing that you've gone out of your way to take the time to watch them participate in any event, whatever it is. You pick it. There's a whole line of these things. I think that um, makes quite an impression on them. I know it would have been when I was a kid, um, but
right.
and I think it's very important to children if they know their parents going out of their way to watch them participate in some type of extracurricular activity. And it could be something even as
Mm.
simple as going, I'm going to go meet my son or daughter for lunch in the school cafeteria, and to sit down and have lunch if you're able to do that. I think those type of things go a long way.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a really good point, because I know that there are more dads today that I see out on the soccer field, encouraging their children with their extracurricular activities, or maybe are going to their track, and cheering them on during track. And it just is, it's it creates such a bond, not only in the team, but also a bond between the child and their parents. That's so important, as you had, talked about earlier, how important the mom and the dad as a team together are so important to that health of that child. So thank you for sharing that. Um, And were there any, were there any really special memories that you can remember sharing with your daughter that, when you look back over your time as a dad with her, that were really special? And they could be big things, little things that, one moment that you found created a special memory for you, but you're guessing it created a special memory for her as well.
I know we're almost out of time here, but I think it's very important to emphasize about being a role model for your children. Children, they're like Marines, sailors, soldiers, or airmen. They're gonna see right through you. You're not going to fool them. And
Yeah.
if you are setting an example, for example, whether it's work ethic, stressing the importance of education, healthy eating
Mm-hmm.
by you showing an example, physical fitness by you showing the example,
Oh, I love
honesty,
that. Yes.
showing genuine love and caring, being the protector, and then, of course, integrity. If you show the example as a role model, they will never forget that. They will never forget that. And and as children go into college or graduate and everything, I think probably the maybe instilling in them, if you've done a good job raising them, say, like as they go away to college or they leave the house to go pursue whatever they're going to do, and they know that you can tell them, I'll always be there for you when you need me, and I won't when you don't. And that's kind of like the mutual mutual feeling that I think that you've done pretty good if you can look them in the face and say that, and they know that they mean that. And then, of course, the
Yeah.
last thing, I know we're out of time here, but what's the probably the greatest compliment you get is for your son or daughter to say to their friends, I want to be like my dad, or I want to be like
Mm,
them.
mm,
If you've achieved that, then I think you've done pretty well as a parent.
right. Yes. Oh, there were so many gems that you shared in that right there. And one of the things that I think was so important that you shared is children, especially when they're young, but even when they're teenagers, they're going to follow much more of what you do than what you say. So when you're exercising, or then they see somebody who exercises and they can do that as well and role model that, which brings greater health and wellness to their growing up. And then if you say, if you sit around at home, right, and you say, you better go out and get some exercise today. If you're not exercising, but you're telling them to exercise, then that's harder for them to follow through with that, because they don't see your role modeling. So I think what we say, what we do, is so much more important than what we say as mothers and fathers. And that, but yeah, there was just so many gems that you shared there today. In closing, do you have some final words of wisdom that you wanted to share with our audience today?
It's example anyone can set for their child is integrity. Integrity. You may
Mm,
not be financially successful, you may not be successful here, but if you set the example for your children with integrity, then I think you're a pretty successful parent.
mm. And then they will probably be better parents as well, right?
I would think so.
Yeah. Or good employees, you know? So that integrity seems like it would run through many parts of our life, whether that's our family life, our professional life, our community life. And so that, yeah, integrity I would agree. That is a very good suggestion. So I hope these have been very helpful things for our audience. As you can see, Bob has a lot of wisdom to share with men today because, even if a man doesn't have any children, what I would say is there is a father within them. And so we honor all men for Father's Day, but especially those that do have children and that, as Bob has said, that sacred work that they do every day to be a good role model for their children or to be a good role model to other dads in how to bring up your children. And that is such a gift. And so I hope that, you have found something, a takeaway here. In terms of any thing that you would need some more help with, I do have a workshop coming up. And so you could go to aureliecormier.com and the Intentional Wellness Parenting website and go to the workshop page. And you can see what I have to offer. It's going to be for parents with young children so that moms and dads together or moms and partners can help their children to grow with better health and wellness, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So I hope you'll join us. And thank you so much for being here today. And Bob, I really appreciate all of your words of wisdom here today. Okay, bye-bye. You've been listening to the Intentional Wellness Parenting Show with Aurelie Cormier and Dr. Pat, where we set an intention to create healing and wellness every living day. Tune into Transformation Talk Radio every third Tuesday of each month at 11:30 a.m. Pacific and 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more guidance and support. Beyond this, I offer workshops to focus on your good health while reducing risk of disease, especially cancer, so you can do more of what you love and spend less time being sick. What I know for sure is that this is especially beneficial for couples who are pregnant, have young children, or teens, as you will give yourself and kids the greatest chance of living a longer, healthier life. So please join us at the Intentional Wellness Parenting Show. For more information, visit aureliecormier.com.